So here we go. Welcome everyone to the first Academy online session. First ever, but certainly the first of this season. Delighted to see so many of you. We're currently standing around 97 swimmers and coaches, which is simply fantastic. So thank you for giving up this particular Sunday evening and hopefully many more Sunday evenings to come. Apologies if there's any extraneous noise while I'm doing the reintroduction. I'm northbound on the M6. Having been a parent in sport over the weekend, which has been great fun. So stopped off to make sure that this all goes smoothly. We've got a TM Jamie who's also on the move, but he is literally on the move because he's in his car on his way back from Edinburgh to Stranraer. So yeah, we're all on the move a little bit tonight, but hopefully you're all on the move too in terms of moving on the swimming now that we're back in the water and able to get back into training. So Academy Online doesn't need any more introduction to me. It'll do what it says on the tin. You'll be signing up for sessions that you'll have seen on the information that was sent out, starting at this time on a Sunday evening, right the way through until Christmas time. And after Christmas, once we've sorted out the competition programme, which we're currently working on, we will be able to confirm some face-to-face sessions for Youth and Senior Academy as well, and maybe a little bit of a mix of national, junior and senior team swimmers in there too. So great opportunities await now that we are back together again as a sport. And if you haven't been catching up with the goings on in the ISL, I recommend that you do that too. Some great short course swimming, some fantastic performances by Scottish swimmers out there in Italy this past few weeks. So welcome again, particular welcome to Jack Thorpe and Zoe Black, who are leading tonight and next week's sessions, and several others besides. Jack's recently retired from competitive swimming. He's a Commonwealth Games medalist, as many of you will know, and he's going to take the lead tonight. Zoe Black is our newly appointed sports psychologist with the National Junior Team and Academy programme, and Zoe, I think, is going to take the lead next week with some support from Jack. So I'm going to leave you in their capable hands. They need no more introduction than that for me. While they are talking, I'll be sorting you out into breakout groups. Have a great evening, get the most you can from it, and think about yourself, how the things that are being talked about relate to you, and most importantly of all, how they can help you become a better swimmer. Jack, are you going to start us off?
Yep, thanks very much for that, Alan. Yeah, that was kind of all it says on the tin. I'll start to share my screen. So basic rundown, I'm going to talk for about 15-20 minutes, present some information, and then there'll be an opportunity for a bit of a breakout room sort of chat discussion around what's been said. Then we'll go back in, we'll kind of sum up, and then I'll give kind of an outlook as to what's to come, both to be delivered by myself and Zoe. So I'll just start sharing the screen now, and we'll just kind of jump into it. Just make sure that's all good. I think that should be fine now. So yeah, like Alan said, I'm an ex-athlete and currently in pursuit of my MSc in performance psychology, and Zoe recently appointed PhD sport and exercise psychology, and I think both our experiences coming together, we really can offer a great insight, and I think our combined experiences will be a great asset, hopefully moving forward. Should also point out Zoe was a swimmer back in the day. We have connections to Mulgine Den. I mean, I kept going for far longer than Zoe did, but obviously she's got a great insight and understands the sport first and foremost, which is obviously very important. So today's session, the real goal is to introduce you and develop an understanding of both planning and organisation in the context of peak performance lifestyle. So my real angle here is becoming a sort of the performance lifestyle perspective as well as the performance psychology. Today in particular, we're going to start with the foundations of really the meaning and the importance of that planning and organisation, and how it connects to your pre-planning performance routines, your cognitive motivation, and that accountability as an athlete, and how it really relates to that cognitive autonomy. And by that, I mean, the more you can kind of organise and have structure to your life out with sport and out with your performance, the more you can optimise the performance itself. And that's really the biggest, going to be try and be the biggest takeaway from this, if nothing else. A quick outline of what's to come and what we're looking at today. As Alan said, there's going to be 8 sessions running forward, myself in dark blue, Zoe in green. And there's a real synergy going on here. We make sure that it does connect, and what we're talking about has crossover, there's reinforcement as we go throughout. And today specifically, how to live a high performance lifestyle, key skills for optimal results. And I'll kind of take that stage further in my next session. And Zoe will really start to introduce the key skills for the more mindset based, the nerves, the anxiety. We're really trying to touch on skills and attributes that if I knew about them 10 years ago, I would have, bitten the hand off at the opportunity. So I really hope you guys can take away something from this, in that vein. And then kind of crucially, as we get closer to that peak performance or in Scottish short course, we're focused really in on those peak performance behaviours. But we'll ease you in and build it up as we go. So today, just a brief outline of some of the framework of what's really supporting what myself and Zoe are saying. This is really the excellence behaviours. A lot of this is really what we're going to be emphasising today, in particular that planning and organisation. I have put links embedded within this. The presentation will be shared afterwards, and you can go and look at the stuff yourself. Easy to digest websites, and it's sort of videos, links, and it really can help you expand on what's been talked about. And this is just a little background on what we're doing and why we're doing it, really. If this is your insight into an all well-rounded athlete from a psychological perspective, these are the boxes you want to be ticking. And this is really what we're going to start to introduce and build on. First real question I want to present is, what does excellence look like? What does excellence look like to you? Great quote from Vince Lombardi. He's actually a collegiate and NFL football coach. Perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we can achieve excellence. And it's so true in a sport like swimming, where is your technical ceiling? And for me, it's a tricky question. You're understanding how to juggle, how to balance life, the barriers, all of these different aspects. And that's the real synergy that comes in. I talked about these different skills that can help you really make the most out of all of these different components and how to order, prioritize as and when needs be. And all these little things do add up. And really, we're going to look at this in depth today and try and understand how to lay that foundation moving forward. This is a real basic outlook of what a life week might look like in the day of an athlete. And I very simply broke it down into fairly generous components, from sleep, academics, your training, including actual training time, pursuit to and from the pool. And the real aspect to take away or consider here is this other 35%. What are you doing with those other hours in your week? What could you be doing to contribute towards a better athlete or more optimal performance? And today, through planning and organisation to lay that foundation, we really want to look at the excellence behaviours involved in optimising these first 3 areas, but also what you can be doing and how to improve in those bigger other areas, if you like, the 1%, whatever you really want to refer to it as. These are just some of the potential barriers in line with those weekly breakdowns. The transitions going through school, through university, conflicts with exams, competition, the build-up. We've all been there, going through it, as I'm sure a lot of you will be, with national fives, whether it's in secondary school, primary school. These things are ahead of you, and schedules get busy, and it's really how you deal with them. Things can become overwhelming, and being more organized and having a real insight into what your week or month looks like can help you release and a bit more critically disposed moving forwards. And I think from that point of view, it's how do we keep all these plates spinning? What can we be doing to really maximize all these other aspects? And looking sort of critically or in depth now at some stuff that I've used in the past and continue to use. You've got different approaches, like the handwritten aspects of a to-do list. You've got Excel sheets, you've got logbooks, diaries, planners. Really the biggest thing is developing an approach that works for you, learning what works, experimenting, mixing in and out. And I'll be referring to examples throughout that will afford that opportunity to look at sort of a connection between multiple of these, or look at them individually. They all have their pros and cons, but I think all of them together, or even aspects of some of them, can really link in, especially moving forward as we progress throughout these sessions. You'll see a connection there. And the real underlying aspect of it is the accountability as an athlete. You know, why you're doing what you're doing, and having a more broad understanding of yourself as a person and an athlete, I think are really key. And we're creatures of habit, and having a routine, setting time aside to really organize your week and set things out, your month. You know, in a sport as intense as swimming, and when you're combining the academics, you know, you really need to make the most of what you've got on your plate. And, you know, me moving forward, these aspects have been a huge part of my development as an athlete, and even moving forward after that, how I'll develop as a working professional. So this is one of the key examples I wanted to look at, kind of the bullet journal. So the bullet journal was developed by a guy called Ryder Carl, and I'll get to him later on, but basically it's an all-in-one opportunity to combine your planner, your to-do list, your diary, and it's evolvable. You can adapt in your goals, your rating systems, and I'll give examples as we go to show how intricate or minimalist you can be. I'm far more on the minimalist end in terms of the actual writing, just because I'm messy a little bit, but I really do take away a lot of what's been said. And having gone through the book and the method, I think it holds true for me. And even talking to coaches that do use it and have been using it for a number of years are huge advocates of it, and they try and push their athletes to do it. And above all else, it's an opportunity for that self-expression and to develop a self-reflective and a critical awareness, you know, that accountability. Why are you doing what you're doing, and how can you feed forward or feed back to your coach and really look beyond just numbers of a weekly total or volume, you know? This is an example from a teammate who's basically, it's fictitious information here, but it's a great example of how in depth you can be, or aesthetic you can be with this sort of thing, to lay out either your monthly spread, or your monthly on the left and your weekly on the right there, looking at aspects of to-do list. That's the blending in there, sort of tracking key aspects relating to the pool or out with your goals, what your week might look like, and the reasons for that in particular. You know, and it's giving yourself a framework. You know, you can take these things as individuals or combine it all in one like this. And the key on the right hand side there, without going into too much detail, just gives reference to what each point means, whether you can migrate it moving forward into another week or to prioritize. And it's really learning to understand what's most important to me, and how can this improve my week or my month, or is it not as relevant as it used to be? This is the other end of the scale. This is myself, you know, very Billy Basic. It does what it says in the tin. I've always been a huge advocate of to-do lists and just understanding what I'm doing that week and why, and just literally crossing stuff out. You get that gratification of achieving something, whether it's a tick. This is all stuff, that's stuff from my diary on the right hand side. Just, this is literally the week of, as we talk, you know, there's some things I just need to do. This is just an example of a basic week. But I'll go into more detail into a swimming related example for myself, but it's really to show you the two ends of the spectrum that I feel you can achieve from a bullet journal, or aspects of, like I've said, a huge component in my development and continues to be. This is just to kind of sum up the bullet journal aspect. There's links embedded here with YouTube links. You can look online, even if you don't want to invest in the book yourself. I mean, I would advise it, because I think it's a great tool. You can at least look at the videos, a summary. There's a really clear website and how you can go about it and break it down, and a real introduction of just keeping it simple initially, evolving, developing, and just basically better understanding yourself and what you're doing and why you're doing it. And for me, it really links to that accountability from you and your coach. And we'll touch on that more as we go, and how the coaches and the athletes can really connect with these more in-depth logs of your daily and your weekly cycles. Different approaches to it. You know, you don't need to necessarily have a diary. You can sub it out for a logbook. Maybe you want certain aspects not to connect, or not connect at all. The point here is really emphasizing that there are different things or different approaches to it, and there's no right or wrong answer. Even if you take only one component of what's discussed today, that's an improvement on what's been done before. This is a great example. I think I was fishing this stuff out. This is way back. This is a logbook entry. If you look at the dates, it's 2011. This is my days at M&B. I religiously took a logbook from 2009 to 13. So that was around 14, 15 to through 18 years old. And I remember vividly, I would come back, I would write down the session, and then as it got more adaptive, I would put down a rating system and give a little reason for the session. And that's a crucial aspect. It's the why to the what. You know, it's one thing to have a number there, whether it's your meters or your number rating, but give a little insight as to, oh, great set, felt good, the gym session went well. Or on the right there, you know, you're not always going to have 9s and 10s or 8s. You know, there's going to be 4s and 3s, and you know, it's a nice reference to look back on that there was a meet at Inverness. I know most of you probably won't be able to read that writing, but basically I wasn't feeling great off the back of a hard weekend of racing, and you know, that's the reason for it. And it's great to look back on that now, you know, 10 years on. I know I've finished swimming, but I fondly look back on these, and it's adapted more recently in the last few years of my swimming, but this kind of, for me, laid the foundation of my understanding of what I was doing. And it's such a huge component that isn't always emphasized enough. I mean, it's not always the easiest thing to emphasize for various reasons, but again, like, you can really adapt it. And from this, you can even add aspects of your goals. You know, you could throw in, I know Zoe will be talking about goals in depth and the different aspects of process related or the outcome based, and there's a connection there. Moving forward into something a bit more recent, this is an example of what you can do on, still fairly basic, you know, it's on Word, it's on Excel. The detail of this doesn't really matter. It's more the actual tangible seeing it. You know, I would print this out and I would have it. This would be me at my busiest point in the season. I think this was 2 seasons ago in 1920, where I would set aside time. It's that accountability of, okay, I've got a lecture here, or this is when I'm going to study. This is when I'm going to read before bed, because for me that was important, because I'd spend too much time on my phone before bed and not get great sleep. Again, that's relating a wee bit more to my next session, but all these things make a difference. And really, it's just having that more in-depth understanding of what you're doing and why, and you can adapt this as you go. But for me, it's laying it out and just like keeping myself to it. Of course, you're not going to stay to it every day and be rigid with it, and of course there'll be times when things will come up, but it's a great way to lay your week out. And if you're not more inclined to write stuff down, this is another great option, but I find it's great to do both. And from here, I adapted it eventually. I don't know if you can see along the bottom, there's that just a very basic tracker of volume throughout the week, and there's some notes along the side as to what's important in that particular week, whether it's relating to the pool, shoulder focus, work on breathing, or aspects of eating enough before my lectures, because, you know, it's basic things. These wee reminders make a difference. And it's these performance behaviors that really add up. And again, that's the whole point of having that understanding, and having it written down means you don't need to have it swirling around in your head thinking about it. It's laid out in a bit of paper on your phone. So what is the best approach? I mean, I'd say there isn't a best approach. The best approach is what works best for you. And if there's anything you're going to do the absolute minimum and just try, grab a scrap piece of paper after the session and just write down, what have I got coming up this week? And then really understand, you know, what do I need to do to get those things done? Whether it's relating to yourself in the pool, or whether it's relating to your week as a whole. And it's just really developing that understanding. And from there, it can really lead on. You can develop it. You can just start linking it into other aspects. But it really encourages that cognitive autonomy that I talked about, just freeing up all the loose thoughts in your head and getting it down onto a tangible outlet that it can be cathartic, that release of emotion. You'll be surprised, having experienced diary entries myself. I've done it all, everything under the sun. I've used different approach, and each aspect really has its strengths. And this is the key aspect that I was going to touch on with encouraging the communication with the coach. If you can really go back and say, why was I feeling great 2 weeks ago, or why was I feeling bad a month ago? You know, what did we do then that really led to that result in that competition or that week of training? And if you have something tangible to look back on, you can pinpoint it, say, oh, that's why, that's the reason why. And I remember having these conversations with my coach back at M&B, or even laterally with Chris at the University of Edinburgh, using my Smarter base and actually looking back and having that understanding. You know, it's these different outlets, and there's no time, there's no early enough point to start, or there's never a point too late to start with all this stuff. And that's the real key thing moving forward. Is it doesn't matter if you only take away a small component of what's been said, or you jump full in. At the end of the day, it's really improving your performance, or learning to improve your performance. So that's kind of the first section that I wanted to talk through. and kind of around 15 minutes there, just shy of 20. This is kind of what I want you to think about in your groups is, why do you think being organized is important? And that's in the context of obviously your swimming, your training, or your day-to-day life. How can organization and planning optimize your performance? You know, what I've talked about there, what resonates with you? And really from this, it's a real open discussion. You can talk in your groups, and if anyone's brave enough to share thereafter, albeit, but that's really want to stop for now, Alan.
Great, thank you, Jack. We are good to go. 5 people in each of the breakout rooms, usual story, accept your invitation. How long do we need on this, Jack?
I'd say give it 5 minutes. 5 minutes should be enough, and then a wee bit of time for discussion after that.
5 minutes, it says then, just before the 6:30.
Great.
I love this bit. Everybody just magically disappears off the screen. Pause the recording here. We'll pick it up again after the breakouts.
Fairly straightforward so far, with what's been said, and I hope it's all fairly digestible, and hope there was some sort of meaningful discussion that took place. Is anyone brave enough to share what they were talking about, or keen to share some insight?
There's Kai Connolly ready to go. Put his hand up. Nice chair as well, Kai.
I think it's like good to like plan out your day and things so that you know, like can look back and see what works for you and what can make like your performance the best.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a huge part. It seems so simple on the surface, but if it was so simple and easy, maybe it's those things that need to be pointed out. Yeah, it's the root and the foundation of this. Anyone else?
Jack, I was just speaking to my group, and I said what I liked was on your photos of your bullet points, there was some little things like meter reading was in there, like, and I think so, like, I like the fact that you still were like having a thought about other things rather than just being of just like it was like life organization rather than just like, oh, this is swimming, which could seem quite intense to a young person. There was still little silly things in there that you still needed to do, which if that didn't get done, then it would affect your swim life.
Aye, exactly. That's the whole point. You know, it's that, I mean, I'm calling it that cognitive autonomy. The more you can get all that extra stuff you can get out of your head that's not important and put it down somewhere, it frees up space to be an athlete more, you know? Yeah. Thought it was a good example to share. Has anyone else got anything?
For our group, we were talking about how like having a routine is quite important, because even if like it doesn't necessarily help you have like a great race day, or even if it doesn't like actively give anything to your training, it's always quite a good like comfort thing to have. So it's quite a good way for you to like relax and work on your mental health, to just know you have this routine that will like always be there.
Yeah, it's that notion of keeping you grounded, you know, just a wee bit of quiet time, 20, 30 minutes. I actually didn't refer to it, but there was times on camp, I was sharing a room by myself, and I just played around with some diary entries, and I got in a great wee routine of 20 minutes to myself, just putting down some thoughts, and it really does help, you know, just keep you grounded and keep you sane in what can be pretty hectic times. Anything else? Any more insight or
Margaret
points?
kind of talked about how keeping organised can reduce like your stress throughout the day and throughout the week and that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge one, and I think Zoe will be expanding on that in some of her sessions in a big way, and I touched on it a wee bit after this, but yeah, I mean, the less stress you can have, the better, is obviously going to be optimal. That's a really good point. Anyone else?
Can I just chime in with one little thing as well, Jack?
Well, of course.
One of the things that came up in our group was that we maybe used to do things like this. And then when things get really busy, sometimes it's the first thing to go. And then that's when we get a wee bit more stressed and a wee bit more worried or a bit caught up in things. And I think that can be hopefully for some people this has kind of been, oh, maybe I should try that again, and try and reduce that stress instead of adding to it.
Yeah, I mean, totally. I think we're all guilty of that, of letting things slip. But that's really what I was trying to emphasize with whatever approach is best is the best one for you, and just really starting keeping it simple, even if it's just a basic to-do list. It's going to help. What about any of the coaches?
I think, Jack, within our group, we were talking about how everybody's sort of individual and different, and what works for some people doesn't work for other people. So comparing to somebody else is not wise. So just making sure that they find what works for them and their lifestyle and what they want to achieve in sport. And that's kind of what we came to fruition, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, this sort of thing is definitely not a comparable from athlete to athlete. And for me, if it was just grabbing a piece of paper because I woke up and randomly had a thought that I need to chuck down, that was the way to do it. But yeah, I wouldn't advise obviously sharing this sort of stuff, but sharing it with your coach, I think, would be a great thing if you're comfortable doing so, because I think it can really align that coach-athlete relationship, and it can, potentially be nurtured from there. Saw something about technology, someone put in the group. It's a great point. I mean, that's why I tried to illustrate, because I'm not the most gifted when it comes to artistry or writing. I think that much is evident, and I think using the example of just a basic word table or Excel, and again, I think a point I was going to emphasize, and I might as well make it now, is that that's transferable. Whether you're talking about Word documents in Excel, if you can touch on that stuff now, particularly at a more younger age, it really puts you in a good stead moving forward.
Another point to consider what talking with my group is, some of these swimmers are new, so this is all new to them. So it's helping them cross apply what they're already doing, that they've got a discipline of behavior. So it could be that they always get organized, 10 minutes before they go to the pool, they've got everything laid out. When they get to the end of the pool, they've got all their kit laid out the right way. And the little light bulbs start to go off. I say, well, if you've already got the skills there to actually establish routines in that, those will cross apply. Now it's just a question of just taking it to another level or a next level.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a theme moving forward with Zoe, in particular, just how we can develop in each session, reinforce what's already been said, and touch on skills that are already there, but really just how to remold these skills into maybe a light that you might not have known or might not have thought of. Anything else before we jump back into a few more slides?
Yeah, hi there, Jack. I quite enjoyed the presentation part in our group. Was quite interesting in terms of the variety of ways that they did or didn't organize their weeks. I think one of the things that maybe came out of it that was maybe more implicit than kind of them spoken about was the notion of choice. So I think you mentioned it there when you said, do something that works for you. But I think one of the biggest parts to this is how you choose and when you choose to make the decision to be organized. I think I had three swimmers in the group. One had a hybrid model of that, bullet journaling and timetabling. One of them seemed fairly comfortable with that, and one was fairly laissez-faire in the fact that everybody else organized them for themselves. Now, at that point, there almost isn't a requirement on that individual to make a choice. And so their life, all of this maybe doesn't seem so relevant, but at some point it may do. So it's good seeing the skills and having those in front of them. And I think for a lot of people, making the decision to start being organized can be quite a stressful thing in itself. So I think this is a pretty good start, but just recognizing that, off the back of this, we maybe all don't have to organize our lives to the nth degree, is a useful thing to acknowledge as well.
Oh, totally. I mean, I think almost that sort of touching on that accountability, making that choice and just making that leap, even if it's on a really basic level, is a great way to jump in and just move forward from there. I think that'll someone agree, no two swimmers are the same. Yeah, I mean, that's the real emphasis, just to make it individual and make it your own. This can be a really personal thing, or you can share it with whoever you like. It is what works for you is best. That's the best way I can sum that up. I think I'll press on for now. We'll have more time to chat at the end for 5-10 minutes. Just want to sum up the last few slides, look at what's to come, and Zoe will have a wee say in her next session as well. So we'll have another 10 minutes or so, probably less than, and then another 5 or 10 at the end, and that'll finish us off, I think. So I'll just jump in and share the screen one more time. From there. So yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of hit the nail on the head with some of the latter comments, is keeping it simple initially and really developing it from there. It's not a case of, you know, you're going to become all singing, all dancing, bullet journal connoisseur. I don't think that's anyone's expectation. I think it's take little bits, build on it, and nurture your own needs. And you can be as open with that as you like, talking to your coach. I think the coaches can play a really good role in this with their group of athletes, whether it's right at the top level and all the way down, everything in between. It's a great way to stay motivated, that accountability, the routine. And swimming and all other sports, we're such creatures of habit, and it's so fundamental to, I think, the way we can cope with what we do. Coping in particular, I think Zoe will be expanding on, and the different avenues you can approach it and how to break it down. But, you know, this is really a starting point, just being organized. That's a form of coping, you know, writing stuff down, being organized. It's, you know, there's groups that talked about stress. It is a potential stressor if you're not organized, and being more organized reduces that anxiety. And if you can keep that as low as you can, your body's in a more readied state, you might get better sleep, and all these things, they have these relationships, and that's kind of those performance behaviors and understanding how it all relates. And it really does encourage that autonomy, that cognitive autonomy, while thinking critically. You know, you can write down what's meaningful, what's not, and can be meter readings or big meetings. It's these little things, and for me that's important. For other people that might just be nonsense, but the whole point is what's important for the individual. And for me, it gives me clarity in the rest of my week if I can just basically stop thinking about something. As soon as I write it down, I don't need to think about it anymore. I know I've got it down somewhere tangibly. Then it gives me more scope to really jump into other stuff and free up what's important and order prioritize. And that's a real emphasis on the bullet journaling aspect, or even just components of it. And it's really what I would emphasize, is having been in that world massively for probably the best part of a decade now, from an athlete and a student athlete, student, it always did order prioritize. And people need to understand that. It's learning at what point you need to make the decision what comes first, and having your thoughts all laid out there, and having reference points to go back to are a huge part of that. And really, they are the foundation of developing your optimal performance. And the biggest takeaway, or one of, is if journals aren't for you, that's okay. It's how you look at your week. And I would encourage you to go away and break down your week. And where does your 35% lie, or what does that entail? How much do you sleep? How often do you train? And just be really basic with it. You know, 168 hours in a week, and break it down. Where are you assigning these hours to, or these half hours? You know, is there a wee 15-20 minute point in the day where you could be reading some of these books, or reading in a little bit more, expanding or developing, investing in yourself as an athlete? And if you only do one thing, or take away one thing from this discussion today, it's just organization as a life skill. It really is transferable beyond swimming, sports, performance pursuit, academics, and it all connects. And for me, and even from, again, being a wee bit more nitty gritty, what the academics and what practitioners do back up, is it really has to start from there. And again, coaches and athletes I've talked to, it really does. It's such a huge component. And I really need to emphasize that the motivation aspect with the goals, of course, from whether it's process or outcome, and how it really can encourage that coach communication. It's a two-way street. It's not always going to be the coach feeding forward. Of course, it will predominantly be that, but if there's opportunity in the week to give a little bit of insight back to your coach in some way, and you can bring forward a bit of evidence to support that from your own insight, I think it's appreciable, and it can be a great thing moving forward. I think that kind of sums up the main bulk of today's session, I will come back to that critical question that I asked at the start, but I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes looking at, again, revising what is to come. I think it's important to feed forward and how all this stuff connects. There will be key skills that are developed from this session, and thinking a bit more critically, learning how to be self-reflective and how it links into your key skills when the going gets tough, and nerves and anxiety, and then the development of your peak performance, these lifestyle behaviors that then lead into the run up and day of, and all this being critical and thinking critically can link to that mindset and that visualization that Zoe will be working on. Again, we'll be touching on each other's topics, but it really does connect and it can hold strength there. This is just a bit of an outline of what I'll be presenting or bringing forward in the next session that I'll be doing in October. Looking particularly at those pre-bed behaviors, social media, how it connects to your performance, both on a day-to-day basis and a day of, and even aspects of how you can expand that into developing yourself as a brand even. Maybe a little bit advanced, but it's still worth noting that it's out there. Progressive muscular relaxation is a technique that me and Zoe will be touching on. It's both a stress management and sleep inducing tool, and there's different ways you can go about it. Again, I'll be touching on some of these in depth and more overarching, but it really starts to develop that self-regulation. And again, Zoe will be connecting aspects both of what we've talked about, and I'll be doing the same with her key topics. And this is just a bit of an insight into what these peak performance behaviors or the skills and tools we'll be looking at. This is the area that I'm most interested in academically, and as obviously an ex-athlete, it's really crucial for me how you understand it. And if only I knew some of the stuff I know now back 5, 10, even 2-3 years ago, it would have put me in such a better position. So if there's anything I can do to feed forward to a younger group of athletes, it would be to do the best I can to fulfill that. And again, you'll see aspects of repetition. There's that cognitive motivation. There's aspects of the diaries, which we'll look on more in depth, and specific race day behaviors, instructional self-talk. All these things are tools that you can use, and there's a connection that lays throughout these sessions. And that final thing before I pass over to Zoe to kind of sum up what her next session will look like is, what does excellence look like? Maybe you've got more of an insight into what your excellence looks like. How do you attain your best self, or how can you be as good as you can be? How can you expect more of yourself, be more accountable, and just in general have a better understanding of why you're doing what you're doing, and just laying out your week in a more structured way. And this is really the starting point of what I hope will be a useful block of insight from both myself and Zoe. From there, I'll pass over to you, Zoe, for the last slide, and you can give a bit of insight. Oh, sorry, start that.
Right, thank you, Jack. Yeah, so next Sunday, first thing for you to put down in your diary or on your to-do list, next Sunday at 6 p.m. We're going to do a bit of key skills for when the going gets tough. That doesn't mean we're just going to look at what to do when all of a sudden it feels like the world's falling down. We're going to talk about different kinds of goal setting, like Jack said, a bit about process and outcome goals, how we can use them in our diaries. We're going to talk a bit about reflective diaries, their use in terms of for your mental health and well-being, but also how we can tie them in with our training diaries and how they can work together. We're also going to, I'm going to introduce just a couple of really simple, easy kind of breathing techniques that you can use wherever, whenever, if you find yourself getting a little bit stressed or a little bit anxious. And then lastly, we're going to talk about reframing our thinking. So that's going to be a bit about viewing the world and experiences as kind of opportunities rather than threats, and how we can kind of get out of that feeling like we need to, like the going is getting tough, and kind of see it as a chance to improve. So yeah, it's just a quick overview of some of the things that we'll be talking about next Sunday. But as Jack said, we're going to be building on kind of this planning and organisation and how we can take these things forward and tie a little bit more into it.
Great, thanks for that, Zoe. So I reckon for the last sort of 5-10 minutes, it's just, again, an opportunity to give a wee bit of insight or thoughts and anything that you've not been able to say or anything you want to add. The remaining section of this session. No one?
Everybody's too busy writing in their journals, Jack, already. Short and sharp these sessions are going to be, so we'll make the best use of them. Joe's got his hand up.
Thanks for that, Jack. You used the phrase a couple of times, cognitive autonomy. I'm assuming you mean by that kind of thinking for yourself. Why do you think that's important for an athlete to do?
Yeah, so I guess it holds kind of two meanings. It can be very much thinking for yourself and being a bit more, I guess, automatic or not having to think as much. And I guess the connection to this is not having as much flying around in your head that there needs to be. By getting it down somewhere and getting an outlet, whether it's in a diary or a piece of paper or a to-do list, any of these things, it frees up more critical thought to being an athlete and developing in the pool or in the water. I mean, you don't want to be swimming up and down the pool thinking about homework that you've just remembered or, oh, I've got that deadline coming up. You'd be a bit more inclined to be thinking about, oh, what am I doing with my breathing? What's my hand position? These sort of things. So that's really what I'm trying to emphasize. I'm calling it by its name because that's what it's called and that's the way it should be treated. But on a basic level, it's just thinking more clearly and giving yourself an outlet to think more clearly.
Can I just add a little to that as well, Jack? I think
Go for it.
there's something there as well in that I'm sure maybe it's just me. We've all been somewhere where you're supposed to be doing something, concentrating on what's in front of you, but you're busy thinking about something that's happening next week and what you're going to do and how organized are you for that. And it's about that kind of free, as you said, freeing your brain space to really just be focused and in the present moment and concentrate on what you are doing. We don't want our swimmers to be on the block thinking about, did I bring my snack for after this swim? We want to be organized enough that we can just focus on what we really are doing.
Yeah, a great way to look at it, especially, that present moment. And I think, Richard, what you're saying there, you can only think about so much at the same time. And yeah, it's very true. It's stop you going around in circles and links into what Zoe said there, just being in the present. It's putting yourself in a position where you can be in the present or as present as possible.
Jack, do you think meditation could help with that? Like relaxation techniques and stuff like that as well? I mean, obviously, you're talking about getting all the stresses of life out the way so that you can train at an optimal level. But can you further that?
Of course. Well, that's in a nutshell. Progressive muscular relaxation is a form of meditation, and we're introducing that in through breathing techniques. Zoe will discuss initially, and it's how you can learn the number of breaths per minute. There's a very basic 5 breaths per minute, and you basically count the inhale and the exhale, and it keeps you grounded. And that's the initial introduction to a meditative state. And linking into the muscular relaxation, that actually connects it to the body and you're activating different muscle groups. So we do actually touch on that within these 8 weeks, and we'll develop it. And we're laying the foundations now, so it's not overwhelming when these things come. But following in a rough path, it does all line up and the dots connect.
Cool, thanks.
Anything else? No one? Jen, usually I have something to say. Stunned into silence.
Very much so, Jack. I've really enjoyed this. And it was good to hear from some of the swimmers about what they're doing. Because some had been keeping logbooks, but one kept a to-do list and her phone has like notifications. So if she hasn't completed her to-do list, it'll still keep coming up, which is quite handy. So it's just trying to find what works for you. And yeah, really enjoyed the content so far.
Oh, that's a great point to the technology that I think came right up at the top. I mean, how many apps are there now? There's apps for everything. So that's another great point. If you can't be bothered with a Word document or Excel or even a diary, just get an app. I think that might be us coming to the end, Alan.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Zoe. Thank you, everybody who's contributed. It's a massive amount of people to try and get folk to say what they need to say. So thank you for those who participated. I hope you got something out of the breakout groups, which will keep as a feature every one of these sessions, whether they're practically based or not. Just encourage the swimmers, if you've got things to ask, use the chat. If you don't want to unmute yourself and speak on the call, take plenty of opportunity to get the answers to the key questions that you want. And that's it. We've gone nicely towards the hour, which, as I said before, we're going to keep it short and sharp on these Sunday evenings. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. Sign up, please, before the cut-off point. So we had one or two people email me within the last hour. It's your responsibility, please, to sign up and you'll get the link. And let's try and make sure we can top the 100 again next week. So once again, thank you, Jack. Thank you, Zoe. Thank you, everyone, for participating. And hopefully see you again without the background noise next Sunday. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers, Jack.